who's going to come and talk next. We're going to do questions and answers at the end, if that's okay with everybody. I think it'd be easier to do it that way. Mr. Collier.
Thank you very much, Matt. Good morning. Good morning as I bent down there. Bad idea. How are we all? So, Victoria, that was really interesting. Thank you. And I think what you have done brilliantly is segue nicely into what I wanted to talk about, which is almost as if we planned it that way, which is really the commercial advantage associated with getting GDPR right and making the most of the opportunities that are presented by that. Despite that, hopefully you remember what Victoria said at the end of her presentation, which is that trust and transparency provide a really fantastic opportunity for all of you in the room and for UK retailers in general to engender much better trust and much stronger customer relationships, and with it, commercial advantage. So, mindful of everybody that we have in the room today being from some form of direct mail background, some sort of print background, I'm going to focus what I'm going to talk about on that. And then basically the idea is to understand not only the things that you need to be doing to prepare yourself for GDPR come May next year, but also what the commercial case is for your business. So if you do these things right, what do you actually stand to gain? So hopefully by the end of the next half hour or so, we'll have a clear idea of what the opportunities are associated with these regulations. I haven't introduced myself. Matt mentioned my name. I am Head of New Business for Epsilon Abacus. For those of you that aren't clients in the room or have never heard of us before, we are the UK's leading provider of targeted consumer data for direct mail campaigns. So it may come as no surprise that I'm going to extol the virtues of direct mail and using third-party data to grow your business. But the good news is that is still going to be something that you can absolutely take advantage of beyond May next year if you do things right. So this is what I'm going to cover. Very, very briefly, why direct mail? So I don't want to sort of preach to the choir here, but I think it's very important to understand the role of the channel in today's marketplace and why it is working so well for so many retailers. I think that'll put the rest of it into some quite nice context. Who are we? Very briefly, how does the Epsilon Abacus data piece work? Where does the data come from? How do people use it? And then we sort of move into the more practical side of things. So compliant capture of marketing preferences. What are your options? So Victoria has talked about that a lot already. So I'm going to try and avoid reiterating too much and just pick up on a couple of points that I wanted to make around consent versus legitimate interest. And then in the last sort of 12 to 24 months, by virtue of being a data business and having over 500 clients that come to us and say, what the hell do we need to do to prepare our businesses for GDPR? We have had to do quite a lot of work to relay information in a meaningful way to our clients, because as Victoria's just brilliantly done, when you summarize it, it's actually not enormously scary, and there aren't actually that many things that you need to do. It's just making sure that you do them right and understanding how to do them right and how to track that. So we'll share a couple of bits, point 4 and 5, of research that we've done in the last 12 months that has helped our clients answer some of those questions that Victoria has highlighted. And then some key takeaways. I should point out anything that I reference here, the slides will, I assume, Matt, be sent round to everybody afterwards, but the materials are also available on the Epsilon Abacus website. So if there's anything that's interesting and you want more detail, then you can download it all for free. So why direct mail in today's market? So I've been known to do 2-hour masterclasses on this. Mindful of who we have today, I suspect 2 minutes is probably going to be more appropriate, but if you do things right under GDPR, I suspect it's going to be highly likely for you if you're preparing yourself from a GDPR perspective to continue to use mail because of what I'm about to say. So why direct mail? What is the real benefit? What are the set of benefits that are associated with using that channel in today's market? The first is that it's precise. So when you compare against digital marketing, in a lot of cases, there is a element of proactivity required from customers to find you. So before they start getting messages on Facebook or retargeting ads of any nature, they will have had to do some sort of Google search. They will have had to be in the market for what you're already selling. Direct mail allows you to get the right message in front of the right consumer at the right time and help them to understand what is available to them before they've actually necessarily made the decision they're in the market for a particular thing. Deliverability is one of my favorite things to talk about because it's just so easily explained in numbers. The example I like to use is email. And for those of you in the room, you look at your email open rates, I suspect you probably see 20, 30%, something like that across your existing email file. If you think about sending direct mail, 100% of people are going to at least pick up that catalogue when they get in the door this evening. There might be a pizza bill, there might be a pizza menu, there might be a bill, and there might be a nicely put together catalogue. So 100% of people are going to see the front cover of that, compared to 20 or 30% that are going to look at the above the fold piece of the email that's been sent. So cut through with mail is absolutely vital when thinking about why it's so effective for so many businesses at the moment. Sales. This is fundamentally why more and more businesses are starting to use the channel, because it drives sales. It's not about driving impressions, likes, click-throughs, opens, etc. It's about getting people to actually spend money and understanding that marriage between sending a printed marketing piece, but actually the ultimate sale occurring online has been a big sort of learning curve that so many e-commerce businesses have gone through in the last couple of years. And long-term value follows on from that. So one of the key challenges that we hear when speaking with our clients is digital marketing works quite well for us, it always has, but the customers that we recruit are not necessarily representative of the type of customer that we would ideally like to have on our database. They only buy during sale periods, they only buy a particular product they may have only ever bought once from me. People that get a catalogue, you are able as a business to get across your brand image and build trust with that individual. We'll talk a lot about trust in the next half an hour, and we have already. And by virtue of doing that, you'll find you have a more engaged customer straight off the bat, and somebody that is going to come back and buy more frequently and spend more per order going forward. So lifetime value is a really key one. Test and learn. I put this up really only to just remind everybody that direct mail is no different to any other channel. I'm sure we all know that. You can only refine it and improve it as you go. But measurable and scalable is another key one. And so many businesses that Epsilon Abacus works with these days have stringent growth targets. They might have investment backing. They need to be able to find a channel that is going to allow them to take their business to the next level. And so many businesses that we work with that are sort of 3, 4, 5 years old, and they've been growing their business through digital marketing, and it's sort of taken them like this, and they're just getting to the point where it's starting to plateau off. They need to find another route to market that is going to allow them to continue to grow their business at the rate that it was previously. And that's where direct mail can become such a valuable tool. So you measure it by sales. It's really simple. You just do a straight match back against who you mailed and how many sales you got at the end of it. And then it's scalable. So by working with data partners like Epsilon Abacus, you can test for future growth. And some of the case studies that I'm about to go through will show you how that happens in practice. So there are myriad case studies I could have shared, and mindful of the amount of time that I have to speak, I've tried to choose 2 or 3 that I think are going to be of most interest. I won't dwell on them for too long, and the full case studies are available, as I say, on our website. But This Works is a premium skincare business, and 3 years ago they tested direct mail for the first time. And the most important sort of benefit that they've seen is repurchase rate. It's quality of customer. 145% above average repurchase rate compared to other channels just shows you in sort of figures just how valuable the channel has become to them. They now mail 5 times the volumes that they used to. I'm talking about acquisition here, so brand new prospects, and they work with Abacus for that. So quality of customer, and the quote there from Joe at the bottom, who's the head of e-commerce, again, just supports that message. Spoke is another really nice example, and they're a a classic case of a business that got to a point where with digital marketing alone, they weren't able to grow their business any further. They secured some investment at the beginning of last year. They needed to grow beyond what they were getting through Facebook, which was traditionally the channel they'd used and used with great effect, but it was only able to take them so far. June last year, they ran their first campaign. Not only did they make nearly 2-to-1 return on investment, which for someone selling £90 chinos is quite a task. Perhaps a few of you in the room that are thinking, well, I'd like to understand how they did that. But in reality, they were making money off their first campaign. And when you've got something like trousers, which people do come back and buy more and more over the course of a single year, you'd normally be looking at lifetime value, but to see an immediate profit was great. But the thing that actually isn't up there that was really interesting is within the first 2 months of recruiting those first customers from catalogue, they saw a 28% uplift in repeat purchase rate against Facebook, just within that first 2 months. So that again helps you to understand the value of customer that you can recruit through mail. And Posh Totty is another one, so they are a premium jewellery business. Premium is a word that you can hear me repeating, so it does lend itself very nicely to brands that want to get across that quality and that brand image. They have stores in London and Brighton, small e-commerce presence, but wanted to grow that. And what Catalogue allowed them to do was not only reach a wider market from a geographical perspective, i.e. the whole country, but also reach a wider audience from an age perspective. So their audience was traditionally a little bit younger, early 30s, late 20s, mid 20s. Catalogue allowed them to open up that market to people of a little bit older age. So another interesting example of the value that mail can bring, different audience to what you can recruit through online. And a higher average order value, that was another really key thing for them because of the browsability of the catalogue, which again, many of you will be completely bought into already. People are more likely to spend more per order. And there's loads of other examples, as I mentioned. So this is just a snapshot of some more businesses that in the last 2 years have started to take advantage of direct mail from a customer acquisition and a customer retention perspective. So obviously that kind of gives you an idea, hopefully, of just why direct mail is working so well for businesses at the moment. Excellent Abacus and what is the Abacus Alliance? So I mentioned at the start we're the leading provider of data for direct marketing campaigns to direct-to-consumer retailers in the UK. So obviously data is our business, but I think I can also kind of stand up here with confidence and say that when you are thinking about both capturing data for your own use and thinking about working with a third-party data provider, don't be afraid to ask questions about what your providers or potential providers are doing to make sure that they as a business are prepared for GDPR. Because the reputational risk, as Victoria talked about, is significant. The TalkTalk example of a couple of years ago, which links to an internal data breach, but I think you can use roughly similar logic, meant that they were fined £400,000 by the ICO, which in reality was a bit of a drop in the ocean for a business of that size, but actually the reputational impact on their business was calculated to be more like £50 million. So when you think about the public perception of data and using data correctly, understanding third-party data providers and data partners and what they're doing to make sure that they're covered and you, by virtue of working with them, are covered is really important. So Epsilon is an international marketing agency. We, on the far left-hand side, there are the data division. Epsilon Abacus is the data division of that business. There are 6,000 employees across the Americas, EMEA, and APAC, and Abacus sits in that sort of portion of it. And the concept is a data sharing concept. So Victoria's kind of touched on data sharing a little bit already. So I'll explain how it works. We are a data processor, so all of our data comes from hundreds of different data controllers, so retailers, who essentially own that data. So we don't own it, we host it on behalf of all those different retailers. So all these different members are providing their customer's name, postal address, date and value of transaction, and first and third party direct mail marketing preferences to form the Abacus Alliance. So what that ends up being is essentially a single customer view of what 18 million UK households are buying across 500 different retailers. And what those contributing members then are able to benefit from is these three things in green. So one is finding responsive prospects to grow their business, to send their catalogues to the right audience. Second is to model into their existing customer data and optimize who they target with their direct mailings to their own customers by understanding what they're buying, not just with them, but elsewhere in the market. And then also some more bespoke bits of insight into their own corners of the marketplace. I won't dwell too much on this other than to say this is the largest single source of consumer data in the UK for retailers using direct mail. There's 540 million transactions across 18 million households. So that averages out at about 30 transactions per household. So it's that depth of information that allows retailers to target their direct mail pieces to people that are most likely to respond. So suffice to say that the data is our business. And so it is not lost on us the importance of data from a commercial perspective. For everybody in the room, data is going to form the foundation of your marketing decisions going forward, and obviously, I'm sure all cases it already does. But also it's really important to understand, because of that, the implications of capturing first and third party marketing preferences in the right way. So I'm going to have a little look at the two areas that Victoria has touched on already. I'm not going to go into what they are because obviously we've covered that. But from a direct mail perspective, whether it's first or third party marketing we're talking about here, some things to consider with the opt-in route is firstly that you are essentially running the risk of having less data to be able to use. If you go the consent route, you go the opt-in route, then it's very likely that fewer people will give their permission either to receive first-party marketing or third-party marketing. So that's a really important thing to consider. Another thing to consider is that if you have relied on legitimate interest in the past, and then you decide actually consent is the route that we think is right for our business going forward, there is a high likelihood that you're going to have to re-permission that entire database under an opt-in mechanism, which is a hell of an exercise. And when you've only got 6 months left to do it in, it is certainly something to consider quite carefully. From a legitimate interest perspective, the opportunity in terms of the amount of data that you can then use is significant. And when you compare that to consent, you're almost certainly going to see you would have a higher percentage of customers saying yes to first-party marketing and yes to third-party marketing. The key thing to remember here is that opt-out in the past has possibly been seen by some as a sort of a clandestine way of doing things. So if you're going to use legitimate interest, and Victoria talked about this, it needs to be clear and transparent with the customer about how data will be used. But actually, if you do that, then the trust that you can develop with your customers is going to be significant. So you'll have more data you can use and stronger relationships with your customers. So just a couple of things to think about from a specifically direct mail perspective when you're making the decision about which routes you choose as a business.
What we're very pleased about in the regulation.
Just going to caveat that before we start. So James Milligan is a solicitor for the DMA, and he was speaking at one of our events at the end of last year. So this was, bear in mind, now over 12 months ago, and this is just a little snapshot of him explaining where legitimate interest sits within the regulations.
What we're very pleased about in the regulation is that direct marketing is being explicitly recognised as a legitimate interest in the regulation. So that means that they recognise that it's in the interests of business to actually be able to send out marketing material to their customers. So for those of you operating by mail, it will end up exactly the same thing as it is now. You will have to offer them the opportunity to unsubscribe, and that will satisfy the balancing test.
It was going to end there. So if you choose legitimate interest, as the route to capture marketing preferences from customers. Victoria has talked about conducting a balancing test, so I won't talk about that in any more detail other than say the Data Protection Network provides a really good template assessment form. I appreciate the idea of having to go through a process of understanding how to balance the interest between you as a business and the consumers that you want to talk to. Could sound like something that's brand new and a bit scary, or you might not know where to start. This is a very good resource, and they have lots of other resources that are very helpful when it comes to understanding the implications of both routes to market, but certainly for legitimate interest. Think about the intentions of use and the intentions of use of your sharing data. Victoria has talked about this, and we'll cover some practical examples in a minute from the research that we've done. But make sure that you are clear if you use either route to market, but it's absolutely the case with legitimate interest, about how you intend to use that data and who you intend to share it with. And have the opt-out statement in a prominent place. I think under the Data Protection Act, a lot of businesses were able to sort of bury the opt-out within terms and conditions, privacy policy, etc. That will not be okay under GDPR. But actually, it's no bad thing if you can get that opt-out worded in the right way, in a place that is clear to the customer and they have a clear choice, then actually that could potentially be beneficial, certainly for your relationship with them, but also in terms of the amount of data that you're able to use. And be clear what you plan to do with your data across all the channels that you capture it through. So it's very easy to sort of think about, well, we're an e-commerce business, it's all going to be through our website. But if that's the case, then there'll be multiple places on the website that you might want to think about capturing data for use. So just make sure that you don't only think checkout and then neglect your catalog request page or your email sign-up page or whatever other data capture points you might have. And then think about the impact of orders over the phone. And as any of you that still have a mail order form in your catalog, then think about making sure that the data capture is appropriately set up there too. So what is the impact of wording on capturing marketing preferences? This is really, well, trust and transparency really is a cornerstone of the regulations. But the wording that you use when you're capturing marketing preferences is going to be one of the fundamental keys to being able to build better relationships with customers. So the research that we commissioned at the end of last year with a data protection consultancy called Opt4 looked at a sample size of 750 consumers, and it provided them a variety of different statements relating to whether or not they would be happy for their details to be shared with third parties. So it was a variety of opt-in and opt-out statements, and also friendly versus legal wording. And basically what that means is friendly, benefits-led, why should you as a consumer think about letting this happen? Legal, very much more strict and not particularly benefits-led. So this is just a snapshot of the results, and again, this is available on our website if you wanted to have a look at the full findings. But basically, 24% of people were, or 24% uplift was the amount that we saw when people receive an opt-out statement versus an opt-in. So there's a higher percentage of people that were saying, I'm happy for my details to be shared with third parties. When that was combined with a friendly opt-out statement, so a benefits-led statement, and I'll show you what a couple of those look like in a second, then it was 47%. That is a huge thing when you're thinking about the commercial impact on your business, if you can have 47% more data to use. And then within specific demographics, for people 55 and over, a friendly opt-out statement saw 85% higher rates of people saying yes, and for men it was a 67% higher rate. So the message really there is that friendly opt-out wording means we're going to have significantly more data that you can use. I should point out this is all around third-party sharing, because that is what our business is reliant on. All of our members have to capture third-party shareable data in the right way, otherwise we don't have a product. However, the logic you can extrapolate to capturing first-party marketing preferences as well as third-party. What does a opt-out friendly statement look like? So this is an example that was put together in conjunction with Opt4 and the Data Protection Network that we share with businesses that are thinking about doing this for the first time, that just don't really know what they need to have in place that's going to A, be compliant and B, allow them to get the most out of their marketing. So this is if you're asking for consent or asking for whether you can send direct mail marketing to your own customers under legitimate interest. Can we stay in touch? From time to time, we'd like to send you our latest catalogues, promotions and special offers by post. If you would prefer not to receive these, please tick this box. So it's at the point of data capture, it's really clear how the customer can choose whether or not they're okay with it, and the advantages to them are made clear as well. And this is if you want to share your data with third-party retailers. So all of the Abacus members will have something like this because they need to be able to capture that information and then work out what can be shared with the Abacus Alliance database. We think you'd enjoy some of the latest products and offers by post from our trusted retail partners. If you prefer not to receive these by post, please tick the box. So they're reiterating the channel post, so it can be an opt-out. The customer understands which channel they will be communicated via, and also the benefits to them. There are some requirements also about what retail partners would be considered, so what sectors basically. If there's anybody that wants to know anything more about that, then there's some information we can share on that. So this is a live example. So this is a business called Mayaka, who are a furniture business. They have grown their business on direct mail. And their example on their catalogue request page is actually really nicely done. So this is sort of the top half of the page, and you can see at the bottom there, they are making it very clear when they're asking for particular bits of data, and certainly telephone and email tend to be treated as much more kind of sensitive data than postal address these days. They're making it very clear why they want that. We won't share your email with other companies, and they only want the phone number so that they can process their delivery. And at the bottom part of the page, you've then got their third-party opt-out statement for receiving direct mail. So you can see here, we never share your telephone number or email address with others, so just reiterating that point. From time to time, we may pass your postal address to like-minded organisations and charities, all of whom are carefully selected by us at Mayaka, who may contact you offering products or services that may be of interest to you. Please tick this box if you do not wish for your details to be passed on. So I think it's very difficult to argue with a statement like that about the wool being pulled over consumers' eyes. It's very clear which channel they're going to be communicated through, what sort of business their data will be shared with, and fundamentally how they can say no. Consumers don't care so much about how their data is used, rather whether they're told about it and given the chance to control that use. And this is a mail order form, so I don't know, do any of you put your hands up if you still have a mail order form in your catalogue? Right, well, this means this is probably irrelevant. Basically, what I've just shown you on the website, it's important to have on your mail order form as well. The thing that's nice here is that they've got two separate tick boxes for, so this is obviously when you're actually making the purchase, for third-party opt-out and first-party opt-out. So that's really important to think about, because if you lump those two together, you're likely to have less data you can use. That number will be representative of people that are happy for their details to be shared with third parties, which is inevitably going to be less than people that will be happy to hear from you, a brand they've just bought from. So make sure you split out those two boxes. I'm not going to talk about this in any great detail other than say that on the website there is a piece of guidance that we have put together in conjunction with our data privacy partners that highlight how you can train your contact centres and what information you need to give people when they're taking orders over the phone to help you, A, be compliant with your data capture, and B, make sure that you get as much data as possible that you can then use and as many customers as possible that you can speak to about the new product launches, events, sales, etc. Phone script for legitimate interest. This is all included within that guidance. We put together a video. I don't know, did anyone see, show of hands, the Guardian video that they made to show what the benefits are of sharing data or providing data to the Guardian? So it's worth a watch, and basically they were the first people that I know of that decided actually we're going to do a really nice concise video which will tell our customers, if they give us their personal data, how that benefits them. So what we did, mindful of GDPR coming up next year, it's put together a video that our members can put on their websites, put in their privacy policies. Some have done that, some have taken this template and made their own in their own brand voice, but just gives a nice example of what we mean when we talk about educating consumers in the benefits of sharing their data, both with you as a brand they're buying from and also with third parties.
We all love getting offers from new companies through the post when they're relevant to us. But to do this, they need to know what we like. This often means sharing some basic information, such as the date we bought something and how much we spent. By understanding what we like, they can tailor deals especially for us. By allowing retailers to share your information with trusted partners, you'll get access to lots more stuff you love and less that you don't. You'll be the first to hear about exclusive deals, all relevant to you. You'll discover discounts you may have previously missed out on, and recommendations for new products based on what you like. All the while saving you time by making it easy to buy the things you want. But what does this actually mean for your personal information? We know this is precious and should always be treated with special care. Whenever you provide us with personal information, we're legally bound to look after it. This means we have to make sure it's secure and treat it responsibly. Not only this, but you are totally in control and can opt out of sharing your details at any time. Sharing your information opens up a world of exciting offers, discounts and products suitable for you, helping you get more of the mail you like and less of what you don't, while keeping you in control.
So kind of a different sort of view of how to speak to customers about this kind of thing, about direct marketing, not being afraid to explain what the processes are, but why they're worthwhile to the customer. So it leads me on to another piece of research that we conducted this year about how long to keep customer data. And Victoria talked about this as a key principle within GDPR. It very unhelpfully says this. So data can be kept for no longer than is necessary for the purposes for which the personal data are processed, which kind of begs the very vague question, how long should and could personal data be kept? So our interpretation is that if you are keeping data from a direct marketing perspective, then that data can be kept for as long as that consumer can be considered a customer. So what we did was produce a piece of research that attempted to help our 500 plus retail members answer this question, because it's a key thing for them. And that was basically by looking at all the data we have in the Alliance and understanding the longest period between purchases across all the different contributing brands. And that was the number that came out. So 4 years and 2 months on average across every single different retailer on the Alliance is the longest time period after which 90% of customers will still buy again. So it's that sort of statistical validity at the 90% point, which is great. It's a nice guide, but there are furniture retailers in the Alliance, there are clothing retailers in the Alliance, gardening retailers, etc., etc. Everybody is going to have a different repurchase cycle. So we looked at it in a bit more granularity, and you can see how that now varies by different product categories. So gardening is nearly 7 years, clothing is less than 4 years, which is perhaps not a surprise. Gardening, people tend to buy more as a commodity. They're not so fussed about the brands they buy from, whereas clothing, much more brand affinity that exists. So this is going to provide, hopefully, and has already provided, a really useful guide for people when trying to make a decision on trying to justify how long they keep data for. But ultimately, it is about your business, and it is about how long you keep data for. And Victoria talked about the importance of documenting processes, and that's really key. You need to be able to document not just what you're doing, but why you're doing it. So one of the things to think about is re-engaging with customers between now and May next year, because if you don't re-engage as well as you can, you run the risk of losing quite a chunk of customer data you're never going to be able to talk to again, because you haven't done any exercise around proving why you should be keeping it for that long. So if you're doing customer reactivation campaigns, that's great. one of the things I would advocate is thinking about how deep you can go into that database, because you might find at the moment you run campaigns back to people that haven't bought for, say, 3 years. But if you could reactivate people that haven't bought for 5 or 6 years, then actually you've got sort of potentially double the size, triple the size of database that you can keep, and triple the size of people that you can still talk to. Excellent Abacus can help with this. So one of the advantages of being an Abacus Alliance member is you can match your lapsed and deeply lapsed customers against the Abacus Alliance, find out what they are buying elsewhere in the marketplace, not just with you, and make a decision on whether they are likely to respond to a small catalogue or direct mail piece if you sent them one. It's significantly easier to do this when you have access to what they're buying elsewhere in the market than if you're just using your own data. Because how are you supposed to know whether somebody who hasn't bought for 6 years is worth sending an expensive direct marketing piece to? Equally, you could think about doing this through other channels. The one piece of advice I would say to think about is that when it comes to re-engaging customers, you have exactly the same challenges you have with customer acquisition, and it's getting that cut through. If you try and use channels like email or online, you're going to be competing with lots of other businesses sending similar messages. If you use a catalogue, you're going to be able to remind somebody of the business they bought. They're at least going to see that catalogue and have that reminder. So if this is something that would be interesting, I'm sure there are some in the room that already do this using Abacus data. If you don't and would like to find out more about it, then come and speak to myself or Michaeli and Dylan at the back of the room when we have lunch later. So that pretty much brings me to the end, but as I think is always worth doing with these presentations, I know there's been a lot of information that has come from Victoria and I in this first hour, and more to come from John in the moment, just to try and summarise what it is that you can take away from the room today and start acting on. The most important principle that I can see, and Victoria echoed this in her presentation, unfortunately I don't have a dolphin, I know, which I did, this is boring in comparison. But dolphin probably is the most trustworthy animal, so I doubt I could have found an alternative. 71% of people buy from retailers because they like them, they trust them, and they respect them. GDPR provides you an opportunity to build trust and respect with your customers if you do it in the right way. You'll maximise the relationships you have, you'll maximise the amount of data you can use, and you'll maximise the amount of money that people spend with you. And in terms of what to do, take action now. So it's exactly what Victoria was saying. Don't wait until May next year. The ICO are going to look much more favourably on businesses who can prove that they have thought about things and started to put processes in place, even if they're not quite right. They're going to look much more favourably on that type of business than if you sort of put your hands up on the occasion that they walk in through your front door and say, oh yeah, I was going to get around to that, but we've had other things going on. So think about taking action now. Think about the justifications for the processes that you want to put in place and get them in place prior to May next year. You've only got, I've forgotten the number now, but it's just shy of 200 days. So it's 197 days, 196 days, something like that, to get everything in place before May the 25th. Capture data in a compliant way. It may be pretty evident that I've extolled the virtues of legitimate interest this morning, but that is because the noise in the marketplace suggests that is absolutely a viable channel for direct mail going into May next year, and it's our interpretation and the interpretation of lots of others we've spoken to, this is going to be the most commercially viable route to take if you do it properly, but ultimately think about what's right for your business. Document everything I've talked about, and build trust and grow your business. That is kind of what the purpose of my slot here today was about. And I suppose the thing I wanted to leave with was direct mail is a great way to build trust with your customers. You can get your brand across, you can get your brand virtues across, and you can build much better relationships with them using that channel. GDPR provides you exactly the same opportunity. If you do it right, you'll build a level of trust with your customers that provides a significant competitive advantage over others that may well not be doing it at all or not doing it as well as you. So if you can couple direct mail with the appropriate use of GDPR from a data capture perspective, you're setting yourself up really well for growth come May the 25th next year and beyond. Thank you very much.